Almost a week ago, this channel dropped a bombshell leak detailing a massive AMD APU that had 3 Zen 6 cores, 8 Zen 6C cores, and a large GPU die connected over a low latency bridge die. And at the time, I did think that there was a good chance this could be the PS6 that we were looking at, although to be absolutely fair to myself, I did say multiple times that it could be an Xbox or something else. I didn't know exactly what it was. And now I believe I probably do. And so before detailing the planned RDNA 5 lineup, yeah, you heard me right, I'm going to get to that, and it is very comprehensive. Before that, I want to expand on what Magnus could be after receiving even more information from my sources at AMD. And so let's throw this diagram up that was from that video a week ago and make some corrections. So first of all, let me say that I mistakenly thought that this could, not that it would, that it could be a 384-bit die. You know, I didn't put the bus width on the diagram because I wasn't sure, but it turns out it is a 192-bit die using GDDR7. I'm not guessing, I'm told directly this thing uses GDDR7. Actually, I have documents proving that as well. You'll see later. Next, it also uses RDNA 5, or at a minimum, I've seen documents that say that the graphics IP in Magnus is Navi 5. So I don't know if AMD will end up calling it UDNA, but at a minimum, they're calling it RDNA 5 right now. And by the way, so is Mark Cerny. Also, by the way, that graphics die is going to utilize a TSMC N3C or N3P node. Sources I've talked to have seen both mention AMD hasn't made up their mind yet, but either way, that graphics die is using some form of TSMC 3nm, and it actually goes up to 70 compute units. But I'm told that the variant that will be used in Magnus will be disabled down to 68 compute units. And actually, on the note of 68 compute units, whatever this ends up being then, I would tentatively estimate that compared to the PS5 Pro, you know, it has 8 more compute units, a better graphics architecture, maybe 40-50% faster than the PS5 Pro, but I don't know, right? If it goes to 3 gigahertz or higher, and RDNA 5 has substantially higher IPC than what's in like RDNA 3.5 or RDNA 4, which there's some hybrid architecture of that in the PS5 Pro. I don't know that yet, but based on all of that, it seems like this thing could maybe double the performance of the PS5 Pro in graphics performance, that is, before we talk about ray tracing. Or maybe, if it's not clock fast, be only, I don't know, 40 to 50% faster, which, yeah, either way, then, now that I look at Magnus, after learning more information, I mean, a 192-bit bus, only maybe doubling PS5 Pro performance, utilizing Zen 6, which comes out next year, so this would be likely an end of 2026 or maybe 2027 product, despite Mark Cerny at Sony saying that the PS6 is years away, and it shares a die with desktop graphics. I don't think Sony would allow people to share chiplets in their console with other products either. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, that GPU die in Magnus, that's a graphics chiplet for console and to be used with a media die for video out in dedicated graphics cards for PC gamers. I did not know that last week, and had I known that the APU shared chiplets with desktop, I wouldn't have as heavily emphasized that this could be the PS6. Now, to be fair, it could still be the PS6. At least one of my AMD sources still thinks that that is the most likely thing that it is, but I don't think it is. I mean, it would be a massive coup for AMD if they convinced Sony to have this high production console share a chiplet with gaming cards. Don't get me wrong. I think AMD would like that, but I think it's unlikely Sony would play ball with that. And so for that reason, I think the most likely scenario, not confirmed, but the most likely scenario is that Magnus is the next Xbox, which might be launching just 2 years after the PS5 Pro launched with 384-bit bus, just like the Xbox One X that launched 2 years after the PS4 Pro and also had a 384-bit bus. And then I would also assume that PlayStation 6 would launch a year or two after that, one-upping this Xbox, if it is an Xbox, in performance back and forth. Although, again, not 100% sure that it is an Xbox, and I could even see it being something for Valve potentially as well. That would make a lot of sense for me if Valve made a console to share the graphics die with dedicated graphics cards so that people are easily programming for the Steam console in addition to programming for an AMD graphics card for Windows. Or should I say Windows gaming? But anyways, that's speculation. But you know what's not speculation? The fact that I'm aware of other high-performance APU code names now at AMD that I haven't mentioned yet, and these might be the PS6. The first one is called Orion. And that would match well as a PS6 codename if the rumors out there that Jupiter is the PlayStation handheld codename end up true, right? A handheld, codename Jupiter, a home console, codename Orion. Orion and Jupiter, that would make sense to me. Or, here's another option. I am also aware of two other codenames in the same group as other PlayStation and console codenames. It is Robin and Robin Plus. Now, people who follow console rumors closely probably just had their hair stand up when I said those, because the codename for the PS5 was Oberon, and Oberon was a character in a Midsummer Night's Dream. So is Robin, also a character in a Midsummer Night's Dream. Additionally, the fact that I know of a Robin Plus, there was an Oberon Plus for the die shrink of the PS5. This could be the planned die shrink of the PS6. And so, yeah, with all of that said, let me throw up a summary slide for y'all for all of this console stuff. So here we go. AMD Magnus, Robin, Orion, Canis actually, console update. Number one, Magnus does not have a 384-bit bus. I am sure it is a 192-bit bus. The Magnus GPU die is 3nm RDNA 5, codename AT2, and will be shared with desktop GPUs. AT2 goes up to 70 compute units, but it's expected Magnus will get a 68 compute unit yield. Because Magnus, therefore, shares AT2 with client desktop, I'm now under the impression that Magnus is either an Xbox configuration or possibly something for Valve. Now, to be clear, some people still think it could be the PS6, but that's what I would speculate based on what I know now. Also, though, I'm aware of Robin and Robin Plus, which are APUs in development at AMD that are in the same family of products as Oberon, which is the launch PS5, and Oberon Plus, which was the die shrink of the PS5. Also, Oberon and Robin, like I said, are characters in Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, and because of this, I do think it's likely that Robin is either the PS6, or maybe if Jupiter is wrong, those rumors out there, maybe it is actually a codename for a PlayStation handheld. I could also see that, I want to be clear. I'm also aware of Orion as a high-performance APU at AMD. Maybe that's a PlayStation, Xbox, or Valve console. And I will say this, though. If Magnus is the Xbox, it seems like it's coming out in a year to like a year and a half. And Robin seems earlier in development from what I can tell, at least based on the files I have access to. And therefore, I would think, yeah, that maybe what Xbox is doing is rushing out a next-gen console, hopefully something that can finally also boot Windows, by the way, that competes with the PS5 Pro, like beats it, but isn't like next-gen stronger. And then a couple years after that, something even stronger than that comes out from Sony. Speculation, but that's what it seems like to me at this point. Additionally, there's something called Canis. This is another APU codename in development for Microsoft, so maybe Magnus is something for Valve or Sony, and maybe Robin's a handheld, and maybe Canis is the next-gen Xbox. I don't know. I'm just saying, I do know Canis is for Microsoft, so that should be a codename on people's radars as well. And so there you go. End of video, right? I mean, it's already long enough. No, not exactly. Now it's time to talk about RDNA 5, because you see, as part of confirming the details I just told you about Magnus and Robin, I also gained access to incredible details about RDNA 5 desktop gaming GPUs, and I don't think this information can wait. Especially because I've seen recent speculation about RDNA 5 online that, well, I'm just going to be honest, it's been irresponsibly shared by journalists as leaks, even though it was just speculation, and it is very, very wrong, and I don't like seeing people spread misinformation. But how wrong is it? Well, what if I told you it massively underestimated the performance AMD was aiming for with RDNA 5? What if I told you that RDNA 5 goes into the hundreds of compute units, and that the top configuration could have nearly 4 times the bandwidth of the 9070 XT, or maybe even more than that? Oh, you wouldn't believe me? Yeah, I didn't think you would, and that's why I brought receipts for this video to prove the naysayers wrong, because the documentation I have, it's incredible, and it requires proof for a lot of you to believe me, I think, and it's been okayed by my sources to share. I believe RDNA 5 could be another RDNA 2 moment, or even bigger. But first, an ad from Micro Center. Everybody, Micro Center is the best place to get PC parts, whether it's the latest RTX 5000, RDNA 4, or maybe soon RDNA 5 graphics cards, or to get insane deals on CPUs that are sold below MSRP with free RAM. Right now, in fact, they are doing back to school sales, check the link in the description to see those. And they've also now opened up a new Santa Clara location. Visit it. Link in the description to that as well. They also accept Affirm and have a Micro Center news page you should click on below to see the latest hardware news. And in doing so, support Moore's Law is Dead. That's right. Checking out Micro Center below doesn't just get you the best gaming hardware deals, it also supports the channel. So support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out Micro Center today. Alrighty then. Now, as always, I want to do the disclaimer before I get to the leak. Remember that these things that are years away are subject to change, especially minor details like exact RAM speeds, how much they cut down some of the dies, and the exact launch dates. All of that can change. So just know that this is preliminary. These things are about 2 years away, it seems. And don't get mad at me if, like, you know, one of the cards comes with 32 instead of 36 gigabytes of RAM or something. But anyways, with all of that said, this did also not come from one AMD source. I want to be clear about that as well. This is one of my longest running AMD sources that has been behind some of the most accurate and important leaks that I've put out there over the past few years. And then details in the document I'm about to show you was confirmed by other AMD sources as well. Multiple people were part of this, and the document I'm about to show you, I can't show you all of them because then maybe AMD could connect the dots and figure out who's telling me what. But this document has been okayed because I've been sitting on it for a while, and apparently this has now been circulated so much in AMD amongst so many teams that hundreds and hundreds of people have seen it, and it's not a big risk to share it. But anyways, here it is. So here is a table of some of the planned upcoming RDNA 5 graphics cards as of now. The first thing that I would note is that there is something called AT0. That is the flagship die. And then AT2, this is the successor die to Navi 48, which is the die that is used in the 9070 XT, and also what's likely going to go into a next-gen Xbox or PlayStation for its graphics, which again, I want to say that alone is amazing. Think about this. The ability to have a graphics die shared between a console APU and a kind of mid-range gaming GPU. AMD will not have to worry as much about margins and how well the gaming GPU sells because they know they can just divert that supply to a console. And also if the console tanks in sales, whatever, they can use that and divert it to the dedicated graphics card market. I think that's just an awesome idea, and I'm glad to see AMD finally doing something like this. Anyways, going back to the chart, what you don't see on here, though, is something called AT3. But there is an AT3 die in development right now I'm aware of. Now, look, I don't know anything about the specs, right? I know that they've played around with various different size dies, and that there's AT0 right now, that's the flagship, AT2, that's the mid-range one, and there's some AT3 that should eventually come out. But I would have to assume it's a lot smaller than AT2, maybe 16 to 32 compute units, and because of that, and because AT2 is shared with a console APU, it does make me wonder if the anemic-looking graphics in Medusa Point, that's the Zen 6 mainstream laptop APU, if that maybe that can be paired with a graphics chiplet instead of a CPU chiplet. Probably not, but I don't know. I just think we should think about that. If AT2, the mid-range RDNA 5 die, is being shared with some APUs, why couldn't a smaller one that I know they're working on be shared with other APUs or maybe in some PlayStation handheld or some, you know, Xbox S console? Just food for thought, everybody. I thought I would say that. But anyways, moving on from the AT3 speculation, AT0 is not speculation, and it is absolutely massive, going up to at least 184 compute units here for some non-gaming customers. Although, do note that in the notes it says that they are disabling one work group per shader engine for this product. And so the full die for AT0 might be as much as 192 or maybe even 200 compute units. Yeah, I don't know how big this is going to get. I know that AT2 is 264 millimeters squared before you add the media die for video out. But if that's that big, and this is going to, I mean, almost triple the compute units, it sounds like, for the full die, I don't know. Maybe this is getting close to the reticle limit of TSMC 3nm. It certainly seems like it could be. And at a minimum, AMD is not cheaping out on how much silicon they give us, nor how much bandwidth they give us through GDDR7, as well as, although it seems like at least right now they're not planning to give the full 512-bit bus to gamers. See here, it looks like they'll disable it to 384. At a minimum, though, it looks like they're planning to give 36 gigabytes of 36 gigabit per second memory, which is a ton of bandwidth either way. And To be fair, though, I do want to say these could just be placeholders. Like, if you'll notice, they just say 36 gigabit memory across the board. How I would take this to mean is that AMD isn't planning to cheap out, that they are planning to go beyond the memory speeds that are on the market right now, and that at least some of these will get whatever the fastest GDDR7 is on the market when it launches. Oh, and then one more thing I would also say here, the idea of media dies. I've kind of danced around talking about this. Yeah, again, so AT2 goes into maybe the next gen Xbox, and then that connects to CPU cores that also have like the HDMI out and stuff. Well, then for desktop, what they will do is just take that GPU die and connect it to a very small, probably skinny die that has, the HDMI out, the DisplayPort, and the PCIe lanes for connecting to a motherboard. I think that's awesome because that means they don't have to waste money on Gen 6 PCIe support for the gaming models. They can make a Gen 6 PCIe like media die for the top like AI or non-gaming cards, and they can make a cheaper Gen 5 PCIe media output die. And that also allows them to share this with both the cheaper AT2 and maybe even AT3, I don't know, and therefore they don't have to skimp on PCIe lanes probably for the cheaper stuff either, unless they really want to save space. They are, moving this out, maybe using a cheaper node for these media dies as well. Almost certainly they are. And so that allows them to save a lot of money and actually give you better products in the low end as a result as well. Oh, and I also like the idea that the 70XT is getting 18 gigabytes of RAM. Again, I wouldn't double down on this. AMD could change their mind. But I think that tells you they aren't planning right now to skimp on anything. And actually, let me throw this summarization chart on screen here if we're going to talk about various configurations. Let's just talk about the products that are labeled as gaming. And I've given them placeholder names like 190XT. I don't know what they're going to be called. This is my best guess based on the specs where they would place them. And also note that I would assume there will be other products. So there's probably, if that is going to be called the 190XT, there would be a 180XT, if you will, below that. And if they think they can beat NVIDIA's 6090, there would be a, probably 190XTX as well. That's just not in the charts that I've received yet, but I don't think we should discount that those things could exist. So a few things to call out here that weren't on the other thing I showed you. Number one, I highlighted in green a couple of things. The first is the performance of the 170XT. 120% of a 4080. That was on an actual document, one I wasn't okayed to share, but that gives you a peg of where AMD's aiming here. The die that replaces the 9070XT, therefore, is aiming to be 10 to 15% faster than the 9070XT, despite using a smaller die, which would place it probably around 5080, or if things turn out really well, 4090 performance in the mid-range. And also, I have access to a document that says it's targeting below $550, which is really exciting because that means if, RDNA 4 brought 4080 Super performance to the $600 mark, if it ever gets to MSRP, that is, I guess, this one should bring 5080 to 4090 performance even cheaper than that. So this isn't just a generation that will raise performance a ton. It looks to be raising value as well, or at least trying to. Additionally, a document directly says that AT0 gaming flagship is targeting the RTX 6090. Don't know the performance of the RTX 6090. I threw some scratch math on screen here for you guys so that you can see, like, if I just average the increase in compute units, or decrease, that is, or increase or decrease in bandwidth, if I average bandwidth and compute units up or down, that's where I get to an estimation for the performance of the other graphics cards that didn't have their performance called out in documentation. But take that as scratch math and assuming a lot of things. I think the estimated equivalent GPU row is the more quotable thing that I'm telling you right now. Don't quote the other thing. Especially, I would doubt they hit 380 watts and can manage to get to 264 the performance of a 4080. Could be wrong. Maybe RDNA 5 is magical. RDNA 2 kind of was. But my suspicion would be that would be more like double the performance because it would be boosting lower than the other one. But I didn't put that on the chart because at that point I'm getting into speculation, and I think that taints what I'm showing you. But so, yep, there you go. You can share this. This is the graphics cards AMD is working on right now for RDNA 5. There's notes below. If I quickly skim through the notes here, the only things that I think are really worth pointing out that I haven't said yet, let's see here. Oh, right, is that these are planned to launch in 2027. I haven't really talked about that, but it is 2027, it seems. And also, I have not seen anything say Infinity Cache. That's right, you saw L2 cache, and not as much as I would have thought, but so far, nothing I have access to mentions Infinity Cache. Someone I talked to at AMD backed that up as well. So, for all I know, they're going to 3D stack, L3 cache on top of it. Maybe they will. But right now, no one I've talked to has heard that's happening. And so maybe they're just brute forcing bandwidth with really, really good L2 cache, of course, built with what they've learned by making Infinity Cache all these years, and then just a boatload of GDDR7 bandwidth. I don't know, but so far, that is all I have access to. And so there you go. Any notion, I have to say, that AMD is leaving the high end is now utterly debunked as nothing but fear-mongering for clickbait out of some channels recently. And in fact, the vibe that I am getting right now behind the scenes is that AMD is incredibly excited to go for the crown again. And I must remind you, AMD does this all the time. Every few gens, like RDNA 4, AMD does not bother to go for the crown because they don't think it makes business sense. They did that with RDNA 1. And then what happened? RDNA 2 came after it and smashed all expectations. It definitely seems like AMD is aiming to do that again with RDNA 5. And so, yeah, I'm excited. I hope you're excited. And that is going to do it for this video. Remember to share it, to like it, and to please subscribe to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel. And if you have even a few bucks or less than that lying around, consider joining the Patreon to support the immense amount of work and research that me, Carbon Cry, and other team members do at Moore's Law is Dead. This is a lot of work, and well, we reward patrons who support us with tons of bonus content that is always ad-free, a Discord, ability to ask questions. There's a ton of stuff in there. Check it out. In fact, actually, one of these pieces of bonus content, a Die Shrink episode, just came out where I interview the founder of the Stop Killing Games movement. I will actually be linking to that in this video so that people who join the free Patreon, you don't even need to sign up for a paid tier, can get access to watching that sort of as a little sampler for you if you've been thinking about joining the Patreon, and also I'm opening it up for free because I think this is an important thing to get the word out about. Stop Killing Games. The deadline to sign the petitions is on July 31st. And so I thought everybody should see this interview as well. So yeah, check that out. And then as always, if you made it this far into the video, at a minimum, thank you for watching.